Good morning, folks. Welcome to the Sense of Things. It's Jeff and Ron once again for another week of what's going on in the world. Lots of earnings. We're at the beginning of earnings season. We've seen the financials already, which were good. And we've seen Google report last night, amazing earnings, and get pummeled today. So we're going to cover a lot of that today. We'll start off with the what's happened in history. Ron's got some great stuff talking a little bit about Mag 7, where things are going. And then I've got a little presentation at the end that I call the Great Rotation that you won't want to miss because it's going to support a lot of the things that Ron is talking about at this point. So stay tuned. We'll be right back on in just a second. Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. Ron, how are you, my friend?
Good, Jeff. Yep, earnings season is upon us, and I
It
think
seems like it's this never-ending earnings season.
I think the thing with Google, IBM, I didn't believe any of that crap anyway. But the thing with Google is just the stock ran, so
Yeah,
maybe the price that it's at right now is where it should be. Right, and it's
absolutely.
still up for the
Yeah.
year. It's still up for 12 months. There was an air. We all know there was an air pocket under
Mhm.
a lot of these stocks. How much of an air pocket? I said 5 to 8% with many of them. Some of them are more. So I don't think it's a big deal. Google will still be the long-term winner in my mind.
I laugh because my theme, we talked about it and we just talked about it a couple of weeks. My theme had been the data centers and things like that. All the stocks that I own are up today and Google's down. And it's like, okay, what did they tell you in the earnings? We're spending a crap load of money on data centers and all that. So yeah, all the data center companies are like, woohoo, we're still doing well at this point, and they're going to keep spending money.
It's when they're going to be able to have positive cash flow.
Yeah.
They could build it. The infrastructure build out is enormous, but
Mhm.
at some point, what is
Yeah.
the free cash flow?
That's it. And I think they'll be able to. I still question, in the case of Google, I still question the model as far as AI and stuff like that. I'm sure they'll figure it out, but what's Google's model always been? Hey, we give you stuff for free, we give you all this, and then they'll figure out a way to make money in the long run from it. And their model has worked exceptionally well over time, but people always second guess them in the front end because, hey, we give you the free stuff up front.
They can see what other AI people are doing, and they
Yeah.
have the scale to get there quicker.
Yes, they
So
do.
it's like I said, and not only that, but you like Claude, other people like Grok. My
Yeah.
whole point at the end of the day is what works for you. What do you like? There isn't
Yeah.
going to be one winner in this. There's going to be a
No.
lot of people that are like, I like this because of this. We'll see. But Google's the
And
scale to get there quicker.
what I've seen, and you know me, I'm a huge user of this, and I'm building out a whole infrastructure for the wealth management and the tax practices right now. And what I found was that it's not just one or the other, it's utilizing the two or two, three, four together to do whatever it is. So it was like my Claude designing the big structure and then working with a native AI inside of one of the marketing tools that I use, directing the show. And that's, I think, been the difference. I think that's the next step with a lot of this. It's not going to be Chat GPT or this or that. It's going to be how do you leverage the benefits of each of them together for a lot of businesses.
But here's the whole thing. A lot of people aren't going to be like you. They're
Nope.
just going to want to use one.
That's perfectly fine because I will run them over and back the truck back up over them again. So that's perfectly fine.
There we
What's
go.
going on in history?
All right, some interesting things. 1941. I don't think this was necessarily the final thing because I know there was a tariff on helium against Japan, but FDR freezes Japanese assets in retaliation for the Japanese occupation of French Indochina.
Yep.
And I might have been the final straw. I'm sure they were planning something, but at
And
this point, this probably tipped it over.
and otherwise known as the gigantic sucking hole of 10 years of our lives in French Indochina, which is actually Vietnam. So,
Yep, that didn't end. 1943, I have to bring this up. Mick Jagger was born. I bring this up because he's 83. My
yep.
folks are 85 and can barely get off the couch.
Yes.
This
He's
guy's
still on stage.
dancing
Yeah.
on stage.
It's amazing.
I always tell my parents, "What do you mean you're in pain? Mick Jagger is out there on
Mick Jagger's out there.
tour."
I just think both him, I think him and the rest of the band wake up every morning, look in the mirror and go, holy crap, I'm still alive after all
At
I
least
did over
Keith
these
Richards has
years.
to do that.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
How he
It's
hasn't
amazing.
turned into dust yet, I have no idea.
I think it's the blood replacement 40 times over in his life is the only thing that's kept him alive.
1948. I didn't know this. President
Ah,
Truman and
yep.
segregation of the Army.
Yep.
I thought they did that before World War II. I
No,
don't realize that they had it through World War II.
no, there were segregated units still. You had, but some pretty amazing segregated units when you look at it. You think of the Red Tails, those were the Tuskegee Airmen. That was an amazing unit. Red Ball Express, there's a company called Red Ball Trucking that came from the Red Ball Express, which was the African American truck drivers.
I knew they had units that were predominantly
Yeah.
black,
But
white,
yeah, no,
whatever.
they were completely
But
segregated up to 48.
eh, I didn't
He took
realize it was so
yeah,
extreme, even
he
then.
took a lot of heat for that too. A lot of heat.
That continued right through the 60s.
Yep.
1961, President Kennedy talks to Americans about the need for bomb shelters. Now, I don't care who's in the White House now or before or after. Can you imagine any president in today's world coming out and say, you may
You need a
want to
bomb
build a
shelter.
bomb shelter, folks?
It's just not, yeah, it's not going to happen.
No. 1965, the world changes forever. Bob Dylan goes electric at the Newport Folk Festival,
Wow.
which wasn't glorified very well in the movie. I was a little disappointed with the movie, but
Yeah, I didn't watch the movie. I'm not a huge Dylan fan. I like his music. Honestly, he's written a lot of better music for other people than he ever did himself. But
I just think at the end of the day, it's like this is the same thing with only filming Elvis from the waist up on TV.
yeah,
Because eventually things change. We talked about this
we
last week
talked
when
about
we
this
took
2 weeks
off.
ago. Yep.
We landed on the moon on July 20th, 1969.
No, we didn't. It was faked. It was in a
That's right.
soundstage in out in
It was all
L.A.
staged. It was all staged. So in 1973, Bruce Lee dies at the age of 32.
32.
This
So
is
soon.
still crazy. They said he had a brain aneurysm. I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It wasn't necessarily an aneurysm. It was a encephalus. So his brain just swelled, and that's what he died of. But yeah, someone who had such a massive impact. I've been involved in martial arts since I was 12, and it was largely because of Bruce Lee.
The guy was in amazing shape. He took care of him. So I don't
Oh,
know. Just look, I know there are some odd things and whatever that can happen to you, but
yeah.
and we didn't have the technology today to check it out, but that just seemed very
Yeah, it was hinky. I think I don't know. There's a lot of talk about triads and things like that were involved. Honestly, I think people just die sometimes, and you don't really get it. Yeah, you don't understand it.
lovely.
So,
Something to look forward to.
yep.
1975, Van McCoy's The Hustle,
Oh,
the #1 song in America, leads the wardrobe for many years.
the beginning of the disco
Yeah.
age, death before disco.
I used to tell you, you could go into a vintage shop. I had my dad give away some of his stuff. He still had some belts and shirts and oh my God.
With the ginormous collars. And I think
Uh,
I finally got my dad to give away some of the ties that when you tied them, it looked like the size of your fist.
Oh, the big wide ties. 1976, Viking 1 lands on Mars and now has incentivized Elon Musk to move there. So that's fine.
Yes, there we go. And remember his pay package. He's got to move, what, 1,000,000 people to Mars to get his full pay package?
1978, world's first test tube baby is
Interesting.
born. 1988, this is crazy. I saw this in the theater. Die Hard debuts, but everybody thinks it's a Christmas movie
Yeah.
because
Because it's
the setting
filmed at
was
Christmas
during
time.
Christmas time.
Yep.
So that's why Die Hard is played nonstop in mid-late December. I didn't realize it came out in July.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
forgot.
still think it's a Christmas movie.
I do too. Saving Private Ryan opens in theaters. The
Hated the movie.
craziest first 25 to 30 minutes of a movie you'll ever see. I thought it was an okay movie overall, but the first 25, 30 minutes with them getting on the beach,
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Were amazing. And that led to the Band of Brothers.
Band of Brothers.
Yeah, which I think is possibly the best series ever worked in history.
Any episode can come on at any point of the episode. If I'm not doing anything, I will watch it.
Crystal and I
And I
watch
hate
it
to
at
say it,
least.
but then they followed up with the Pacific, and that was
It was
horrible.
awful. It was terrible. And the new one, whatever Kings of the Air or whatever the heck that was on Apple TV was terrible too.
I
So yeah, once again, we watch it probably 3 times a year, the whole series, because we own it on DVD because I love the series. I love the story and the people and everything else, and got to meet a couple of them when we were in Normandy. The guys that did the tour for us had done tours for those guys, so they introduced us to a couple of the guys that were still surviving at that time. But yeah, they're all
yeah.
gone now.
Yeah. 2011 space shuttle program ends when
Mm,
Atlantis lands in Florida, and space shuttle overall had 135 missions. I think they first took
mm.
off. It was 1981. I remember watching them land. We were in school, so pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I thought this was an interesting stat. Forgot to give you this in the preamble.
Mhm.
U.S. Treasury has borrowed 155 billion every month of this fiscal year and is now paying 24 billion a week in interest on its debts. People could pause and read the rest of this article. It is just astounding.
It's
And
sickening.
our national debt's going to trip over here 40 trillion with no end in sight and no adults left in Congress to say this has got to stop.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's going to happen here. And I'm not going to blame it all on the war, but at some point, we got to stop printing money. We got to stop issuing treasuries. I don't know. This is very much as a sore subject with me.
Yeah. It's just unreal. And it's like no matter who you vote into Congress, they get up there and it's like, I can't cut any spending because we
I'm
just need
not
to
going to get
spend more
reelected.
money. Yeah. It's like, okay, there's nothing that, okay, we're gonna do this, but we need to cut spending someplace else. Even just the ungodly amounts of fraud that we're seeing, and that's just unchecked by the government until now. It's really been unchecked. They just give it out and then go, I assume they're going to give it to the right people, and you find out it's a bunch of scumbags that are stealing money from the people who really need it at
I
that
know.
point.
I know. So with earnings, I thought there were four charts here. The first two
Yep.
charts are going through year over year. The top 7 stocks over the 493 when it
Mm.
comes to earnings growth. This is disgusting. This
Yeah.
is just absurd. And then on the bottom, the top 5 contributors to that growth, obviously from Q2.
Yeah.
And then you take a look, obviously with oil going up, the next 2 are energy stocks. But that Micron, it's unsustainable. We all know that, but it's
Yeah.
absurd. But then you look at just if you take out Micron and NVIDIA, it's still 27% over 16.8%. I just think these are astounding numbers that if you just pulled out the top 7, we're still doing okay, but our market would probably be 10 to 15% lower at the minimum. That's just my thought. What are your quick thoughts here before I move
No,
on?
I totally agree, and you'll see this in a moment. My take on this as we go through this, but my take on it agrees exactly with where you're at. But there's a shift going on as a result of that, which is interesting.
Yeah, so here was an interesting survey. Inflation, it's back on the front burner here
Yeah.
as the number one concern of both consumers and executives because the government could look at all their data all they want. The politicians could have put a spin on all the numbers all they want. All I know is I should say, I'll admit it. I never really paid attention to prices of things in the supermarket. If I
Mm.
wanted it, I got it. I never got an
Yeah.
abundance of everything, but if I wanted, I got it. I'm starting to look at things. And
Mm.
by the way, going out for food is insane.
Yeah.
2 people, 2 eggs, toast, coffee.
$2.
Tax and tip, $40.
Yeah.
Actually, it was 43 cheap.
Yeah.
I could buy that and make it for less than $6.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So,
where is my experience that I'm paying for?
yeah.
This is a bit crazy.
Crystal and I, it's like we work together. We typically eat breakfast every day and lunch every day. And it used to be, it'd be funny on the weekend. She's like, we're just have a busy weekend. We're just not going to make breakfast. And I'm like, no, we're going to make breakfast because I'm not spending even going to a fast food place for breakfast. This is $20 a pop. at this point. So I'm like, no, we're going to take 30 minutes. We'll make breakfast every day for ourselves. And then we're not spending all that. It's ridiculous. It's gotten out of hand. And it's not just the food itself. It's that everybody wants to make $25 an hour. And that's, as a business owner, that's the biggest cost for me is people, not all the other stuff. Yeah, the other stuff goes up, but it's
And
the
that cost
cost of
is only
people.
going to go up.
Yeah, it is. And every time you raise it, then everybody's like, oh crap, now we're spending more money on other stuff. Inflation's going up, and then, okay, we need another raise. And there's a point where small business just can't do it anymore
Well,
at
if you're
that
getting
point.
the productivity, that's one thing.
Absolutely.
But for administrative help and stuff like that,
Yeah.
how do you justify that?
I can't. I honestly can't. That's you and I talked about this. I built a complete team of AI employees effectively that do most of my work that I was spending money on VAs and everything else at this point. They cost me nothing. They work nonstop and they get the work done when I ask them to do it versus I don't want to work today. I'm sick, all that type of stuff. And I want 20 bucks an hour. Sorry. I'm a realist at this point. All right. Let me pull this thing up here real quick and I'm going to share different from my usual nerdy economics take. I'm going to kind of go through this real quick. Can you see that, Ron?
Yep. Great
Okay.
rotation.
So great rotation. So this a structure. One of the things that I built within my company, and this is one of my AI employees, was I'd been following a guy who reports on the markets and things like that. And I was just gut feel. The information I was getting from him, I wasn't super happy with because his take on the markets, I was like, I just don't see it the same way you do. And he was just inconsistent with a lot of it. So I built an AI employee that just really looks at the markets and we gather a massive amount of data every day. And what it does is it gives me a feel for where things are going. And so this came out of Peter, who I named after Peter Lynch. It came out of Peter, and I put this into a presentation to get an idea of what this looks like over time right now. And so this is called the Great Rotation. The interesting thing that's been happening here in 2026, coming out of 25 and going through 2026, is it was all about the Mag 7. Everything over on this side of the equation was all Mag 7. That's what was driving the market. But in recent months, what's happened is we've seen a pretty massive shift to financials, healthcare, utilities, even real estate. Industrials are still hanging in there. Consumer staples are still hanging in there. Energy is on the rise, as are financials. Financials have been a mess for a while, but they are really taking off. And if you've watched the earnings season right now, that part of my book too has been really exceptionally well run. These companies like JP Morgan, the big banks, JP Morgan, Bank of America, have had just phenomenal earnings. And a lot of it's out of their trading operations, the net interest margins, and all that. Interestingly enough, you're seeing a major shift out of information technology, specifically the big caps. And I think a lot of that is if you're a Peter Lynch fan, if you don't know who Peter Lynch is, he's probably one of the most successful mutual fund managers ever in history. He retired off the Magellan Fund, I think right before I came on board when I was working for
Late
Fidelity.
90s, it was early 90s, late 80s. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like 93. I came into Fidelity in 94 and Peter had retired and became he was the coach for a lot of the younger portfolio managers. And Peter had an average return of 20% on the Magellan Fund for his tenure of about a 12-year tenure on that.
I
So
think he got out because he knew he couldn't.
I know it was not sustainable.
I read
Yeah.
his book, or I think he was burnt out too.
I think it was too. And Peter was definitely a data hog. And you looked at his desk. I've seen pictures of his desk and it was like piled high. But Jeff Bennett came in behind, who was really his handpicked successor, did extremely well for a very short period of time, and then went off and became a wildly successful hedge fund manager. Peter always said, prices always follow earnings. And what this chart shows is the earnings growth crossover. Mag 7, it's up, or Mag 7's been kind of down, even though they've had great earnings reports and all that. They've steadily been declining. And the other part of the market, the other 493 have been steadily rising. And there's an inflection point that this predicts somewhere out Q4 2026, Q1 2027, where that crosses and the Mag 7 earnings go down, yeah, or they're just not going up at the highest rate of growth, and the other 493 are there. So we've got this rotation going on in earnings, which leads to the rotation in stocks. Autopsy, a record quarter, headline 9.11, I think, billion at this point, or trillion. There's unrealized paper gain from Anthropic and SpaceX markups, and the adjusted core earnings 2.85. With this is just Alphabet here. You're starting to see this AI CapEx sinkhole that's going on. They're spending a ton of money. They're pouring it in there. Now, once again, it helps my companies that I invest in because they're on the end of the build for data centers where these guys are spending money. But it gets to the point where this is starting to peel off from operating cash flow over time. And the tipping point here is there's negative free cash flow. Google, first quarter since Google's 2004 IPO that ended with a negative free cash flow. I think this is kind of what the market was looking at from the perspective of Google today. Once again, the end people that are getting the bulk of this spend are doing well, but Google is spending a lot of money. Now, do I think they're going to figure this out? Probably. But that means that at some point, they're either going to have to make a ton of money off of it or they're going to have to pull back that spending. And I think that's what the market is anticipating at this point. Thoughts?
I know we talked about this before it started. This is the problem. They got all this CapEx spending. This is just like what happened in the late 90s, right? Mid-late 90s, where, look, we're going to spend now because we'll make it up later. But if we don't get ahead of our competition, we're going to be left behind.
Yeah.
But they're already printing and minting money that whatever they're spending, it's like disposable income to them.
Yes.
They're paying their bills, they're paying their people,
Yeah.
they're performing. So at the end of the day, really what is monopoly money to them? So I think if you're an investor, you're like, I just think, like I said, Google to me, you just keep adding on dips.
Yeah. And I think of it with a lot of those Alphabet, Apple, in a lot of cases, you just don't trade those stocks. You buy them. They should be your core holding. I personally don't own any of the big players just because we typically will have a QQQ position or something inside of our portfolio. So I figure we're getting those through something else. But as far as an individual stock holding, we typically don't own the big boys and we focus on smaller companies. But once again, if you're out there and you're an investor and you're saying, hey, I'm looking at the long run, yeah, buy on the dips with these things because they're fun. Yeah, they're phenomenal companies. And same thing.
It'll be 5 and 10 years from now.
Yeah, I think the same thing with Amazon. I was listening to Amazon's head of the data part of their company and their AI portion within AWS the other day, and the launch of that business. He was explaining it and he goes, let me explain something to you. He goes, when we launched AWS, he goes, within 3 years, we were making it was like $2 billion, $3 billion within 3 years of the launch of AWS. He goes, the launch of AWS AI, we're 2 years in and we're already earning $24 to $27 billion a year on that. Yeah. And they're on the data end of it. And it's funny to listen because they don't report individual units in their earnings, and the market focuses on, yeah, but they didn't sell as much through the bookstore or Amazon, the platform. Yeah, but that ain't where the money's at. It's all these other places where they're investing money and they're making money and printing it. Do I see the data center world growing? Yes, because they're going to need it. Do I see these companies being able to figure out how to make money with it? Absolutely.
Just take a little time.
So don't think about the news. But what I would say, and I go back to that first chart, the market is starting to rotate. It's not just the Mag 7 anymore. If you think, okay, I need to concentrate my portfolio in just these big cap stocks, it ain't it. You need to start adjusting your portfolio because we are finally seeing the market broaden out a little bit, and the earnings are supporting that, which I think is fantastic.
You got to right size the portfolio, but
Yeah.
certainly the winners are going to continue to win.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, folks, thank you for joining us again. Hopefully, this was helpful for you to learn a little bit. We will see you guys back here the very next time.